Welcome to all. We are living in the 21st century. So, as we live, we know that we have to face many issues and there are many concerns. In today's session, we are going to discuss about adult learning issues and context. This topic is part of the course MAAE 006, which is one of the courses of Master of Arts in Adult Education. You know that School of Education is offering 2 master degree program, and one of the master degree program is Master of Arts in Adult Education. And in this course, the purpose is to get acquainted the learners about the need of adult learning skills. The main objective of this session is to develop understanding about adult learning issues, to identify the issues related to adult learning in various contexts. When we look at adult education, we know that it is completely different from child-centered education or how to teach children. That's why in pedagogical aspect we use the term andragogy for adult teaching learning process and for pedagogy for the child-centered teaching. What are the characteristics of an adult? When we look at the characteristics, we can see that the adult, they are matured learners. And when we look at the definition of adult, what we can see is that the adults need to have maturity in their psychological being. Sometimes we may state that the age specify the criteria or to define an adult. More than the age, what is important, the maturity is very much important. And we know that this adult education, sometimes it may be confined to the illiterates or the dropouts who couldn't complete the school education and who want to pursue the higher education. So in this context, when we look at the characteristics of adult, we can state that maturity is an important part and we cannot confine adult education to the basic 3 R's: reading, writing and arithmetic. So all of us are adults and still we are continuing the education. So the term adult, we can perceive it in the aspect of the continuing education, which is very much important, and the different types of skills that are necessary to acquaint. And when we look at the adult learning, there we can state that it is an open and inclusive form of learning by adults of all ages with or without preparatory school or college education. Sometimes some may not be able to complete the school education. Some may not be able to proceed for the higher education. But when we look at the past experiences or the achievements and the learning experiences of the adults, it may be different. And then we can see that they have different needs, objectives and interest levels. So each adult who are coming for the education purpose, their needs is different, their interest is different. And now, as I have stated in the beginning, that the age is the 21st century. What does this 21st century denote? It is the current century in Common Era in accordance with the Gregorian calendar, and it began on 1st of January 2021, that is MMI, and will end on 31 December 2100, MMC. So it is the first century of the third millennium. And this we can see in the Wikipedia, it has given in detail how we are calculating this MMI and the MMC. So the millennium, first millennium and up to 2100 MMC, this the 21st century is continuing. And now we have seen that adult learning, we have seen what is adult learning and what is 21st century we have seen. And next term, what is important is the skills. What do we mean by skills? The skills are diverse abilities required for effective living and working. We know that, and when we are at the age, in the infant stage, we know that more than the skills, we need what information, the knowledge, what is more important. But when we come up through the stages of life, we can see that what is important is the skills is very much important. In the case of the adult, what is important is skills is important. So what type of skills is important? We know that they need to acquire different life skills, which is very much important. And more than the life skills, as we know that we are adults, we may be working as well as pursuing some new degrees. For this purpose also, what type of skills is needed? The employability skills, which is very much needed in the 21st century. And along with the employability skills, we know that the digital skills is also needed. And for the sustainable development of the adult education, when we look at the Sustainable Development Goal 4, we can read thus that ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities. So this Sustainable Development Goal 4, it always promotes that there should be an inclusive and equitable quality education. As we know that in all aspects, the inclusive concept is coming. We cannot exclude anything. We have to include all, and there is no differences on the basis of gender, caste, color, race, or language. And more than that, the abilities of the individuals, that the children with the disabilities is also admitting in the educational practices or the teaching learning process in classrooms. So this inclusive concept is very much important. And then equitable learning should be provided. We know that equality and equity, it has different connotations, where equity is very much important. And the educational opportunities, it should be accessible also. And more than that, we can see the concept of lifelong learning, which is emphasizing in NEP 2020. So lifelong learning process is very much important, and the continuing education is also important. And in the case of the adults are in the process of lifelong learning. And when we look at the 7th target of Sustainable Development Goals, we can read thus: by 2030, ensure that all learners acquire the knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development, including, among others, through education for sustainable development and sustainable lifestyles, human rights, gender equality, promotion of a culture of peace and nonviolence, global citizenship, an appreciation of cultural diversity and of culture's contribution to sustainable development. Here, this SDG goal, it stated that what are the things that we have to emphasize when we try to provide education for the adults. That we have to provide the knowledge, which is not that much essential because of the existence of the knowledge in different medias. And the skills, how to develop the skills. And here we can see that the lifestyles, we have to change the lifestyles while we are living in the present century. That the present adult, they have to develop the skills in digital learning a lot. Then the human rights, where we can see there are different kinds of violences taking place and there should be the gender equality. Then when we look at the society, we can see that there are different kinds of conflicts that are occurring. So in the midst of this conflict, what is needed? Peace and non-violence. That is very much needed. And the next concept that is emerging is the global citizenship. Because we cannot confine our citizenship to a particular country, and because of the globalization process, we know that we can extend our connectedness to other countries, where we need to develop the concept of the global citizenship. And then comes to the issues. What are the issues the adults are really facing in the learning process? And for these issues, we can see we have stated about some of the practices what the adults have to develop and what are the issues. And these issues are always related to the context. And the context of adult learning can be divided into three: context of democracy, context of development, context of peaceful living. So when we think of the context of democracy, we know that democracy, it is the government of the people, by the people and for the people only. And there we know that the voice should be heard from the people and the government is the representation that was exercised by the people through voting. And in the context of democracy, we have to link it with the today's world where we can see that globalization which plays an important role. So globalization is raising new issues for democracy and adult learning, where we can see that the economic globalization is leading to the marginalization of large numbers of people. When we think of the globalization in the political aspects, we can see that there are a lot of violence taking place or the conflicts taking place regarding the rights of the adults. And we can see there are different types of strikes or the raising of voices of marginalized group in terms of citizenship is taking place. Even in one country itself, many of the people are devoid of their rights. They don't have the right to vote, or they may not be considered as the citizens of a particular country. So here comes the importance of the human rights education, which is very much important in the context of the present concerns or the issues that adults are facing. So here, by considering this political globalization, when we come to the economic globalization, we can see that many of the people, they are denied of their economic living, how to sustain their living, how to get their livelihood. And many countries, they are facing major problems concerning human rights and equity. And even in countries that are experiencing high economic growth rates, there are growing disparities between the rich and the poor. And the governments, they are often left with little choice but to accept structural adjustment strategies proposed by external agencies. So what we can see here is that more than the globalization at the political context, in the economic context also we can see where many of them are striving hard to find out their daily food itself. So there is a wide gap at the disparity between the rich and the poor. And more than that, what we can see is that all the things what is happening, that the globalization, that economic globalization, it is increasing, and then we can see that the disparities between the haves and the have-nots, they are increasing a lot. Then globalization is affecting all aspects of our life, living and work environment, including socio-economic, political and natural environments, requiring learning of different kind for raising our voice, however small we may be, and contributing to the global development as global citizens without local, national and international boundaries. So this globalization concept, we can see that it is affecting our life, and it is not only affecting the political arena, it is affecting the workplace and the daily life because of this globalization, that we are able to purchase anything which is available internationally because of the global market and the global connectivity that we have through different kinds of economies. Then the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs Sustainable Development states that the 2020 Agenda for Sustainable Development, adopted by all United Nations member states in 2015, provides a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet now and into the future. At its heart are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which are an urgent call for action by all countries. Here we can see that all countries, it includes the developed and developing, and the need for a global partnership is important. So no country can sustain on its own, or can be stated that they are independent on their foot. Because of this global connection and the global partnership, we need to develop the interconnectivity between different countries, which is very much important. And now we can see that the UN department, how they have defined the globalization thing, that we can state that the UN Department of, they also recognize that the poverty should be ended, and other kinds of deprivations also we can see that it should go hand in hand with strategies that improve health and education, reduce inequality and spur economic growth, all while tackling climate change and working to preserve our oceans and forests. So here the deprivations, it is not in terms of economic concept, where we can see that the natural resources which are available to all, they are also deprived to some kind of groups, where we can state that even the natural resources, take the example of the Kaveri water issue, where the issue is taking place between two states, that one state is not getting enough water, so that the other states, they are making the boundaries and the fences and the walls, and they are not able to share. So in order to have a peaceful and harmonious living in this planet, what is needed is a sharing mind is very much important. So this is also part of the adult learning process, where we need to learn to share the resources properly. And then most of the man-made calamities, when we look at, we can see that the landslides, then the earthquakes, the effect of corona, all the things, they are man-made calamities caused by the adults only, while the man-made calamities that we can state that the landslides is not directly but indirectly there is the part of the role of the human beings. Take the example of the history of wars where it is repeating, and the treaty that we try to end the wars, it has given a good lesson to us where we are not able to learn from these lessons. What is the impact of their learning for peaceful living while we are going through these world wars? We may be rich, well educated, well trained, highly developed, but to aim for peaceful living could be like a boon. So, this adult learning issues and context, what is needed in this context is value education, and we should practice right from primary school level extending to lifelong adult learning and practice. So, what is important that the human rights education is very much important, and it should also be a matter of interest for all of us to transform immediate outcome of adult learning in the context of calamities into a long-lasting effort for peaceful living by moving away from our worries, and expect that this have long-term impact on the entire population of the globe. So what all things we can state that the adult learning issues, it is not only related with the teaching learning process, but as an adult it is living on this planet. We have the other issues where also the adult needs some kind of training. Here I would like to quote the Kofintia 5th 1997, where it stated that the substantive democracy and a culture of peace are not given, they need to be constructed. Any effort that emphasizes initiative from below as well as the capacity to recognize diversity is part of the object of adult learning for democracy and peace. So what is important here, the context of democracy we are discussing, there the peaceful existence of human beings is very much important. Now when we look at the emerging issues in about the adult learning process, we can categorize it as the civic literacy, ethical literacy, social justice literacy, and digital literacy. So come to the civic literacy, what we can state is that it is also related with the concept of globalization. So the civic education we should start from schools, and it should be integrated into community work and adult learning, where we can see that in the civic literacy what is important, the vocational skills is very much important, because the adult learning, they are working and then they are continuing their education. So new skills in the workplace, that is very much important in order to make the democracy more viable. And above all, adult learning is a tool that can help to encourage learners to understand and debate injustices in the context of the new world economic and political order. And we know that we have to promote greater opportunities for the marginalized group, especially for the women and the minorities, and there should be equality and justice for everyone. And we know that in the globalization context, we need the international understanding. And in the inclusive concept, we need to respect the diverse cultures and economies, which a subsistence mode of living is essential to culture and survival. Coming to the next emerging issue, that is the ethical literacy. Let us discuss the ethical literacy, that the ethics, which is the concept of the right and wrong in the behavioral pattern. So this ethical literacy is also emerging, and we know that this ethical literacy is emerging in different fields, that the medical the ethics that should be followed in the medical field, the ethics that should be followed in the engineering field, and we know that in the adult learning context we may state it as the professional ethics. And in the concept of the adult learning, because of the introduction of AI, that is artificial intelligence, the concept of the ethical literacy is very much important, because the content that we are using, whether it is useful or not, and whether it is the original idea of the person or sometimes whether it is plagiarized. So here the artificial intelligence, introduction of artificial intelligence, the ethical literacy is emerging when we try to think in terms of the emerging issues of adult learning context. The next one, that is the social justice literacy, that it is an idea of justice that is based on equality in society. The idea of social justice goes against any kind of discrimination based on social class, social status, or any other reasons. As we know that the inclusive concept, it always stress for the social justice literacy. So what is important here is the human rights education, where the learning process build up knowledge, values and proficiency in the rights of each person. And the education teaches students to examine their own experiences from a point of view that enables them to integrate these concepts into their values, decision making and daily situations. So human rights education, which is very much important, should be incorporated from the primary school itself. And according to UNESCO on digital literacy, which is important, it is the ability to access, manage, understand, integrate, communicate, evaluate and create information safely and appropriately through digital technologies for employment and in the workplace and entrepreneurship. So this ICT literacy is also very much important when we think of, so that we can state that this ICT literacy and the digital literacy is also important. And in some, we can state that the adult learning issues are more, and where we have to link these issues with the context, which is divided into the different emerging issues, the context of democracy, the context of development and the context of peaceful living. So the thing what is important is that the digital literacy is important, the civic literacy is important, the social justice literacy is very important, and a humanitarian aspect on the part of the adult learning process is very much important. Thank you.